Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Ghost of Eregion. I'm Sel and today I'm going to showcase my GREYSOUL build, break it down piece by piece and explain why I'm wearing the gear I have on, how it works, and changes to the build that you can make to help fit your playstyle. Now, no waiting, we're just going to jump right into the build. Now first, we have one of my favorite weapons in the game, the Sword of the Archons. Apart from being one of the coolest looking weapons in the game, it also is one of the most powerful. First thing you should know is that you get this weapon in the Lighbringer game mode. You can go to any realm and it can drop in any element. For my build, I have air. As you can see displayed right below the large number, you highlight the weapon. More on elements later. When I talk about the alternatives, I'll get into the elements. And what I mean by alternatives, I mean alternatives to the build. So changes you can make to fit your playstyle. The first thing you want to have on your Sword of the Archons is crit chance as a secondary. When you first receive the weapon in Lighbringer, it will be cursed. It will have you complete feats to unlock each curse. There will be 3. These can range from defeating enemies and bosses in ATOT to defeating enemies and bosses in Dreamstones. After unlocking each curse, you will also receive a greater curse, which you can apply in Lighbringer to increase your loot. You apply these in Lighbringer at tiers. When you upgrade your weapon, you are going to want to double the crit chance, and then on the last upgrade you also want crit chance again. The secondary weapon can be of any choice, as long as it has crit chance. I right now have the Sunflow Destiny, which is a double primary weapon, which means it has 2 primary traits that can only be found in ATOT. It rolled with 55% full health, or 55% damage at full health, and gained the greater blessing of endurance whenever I inflict an ailment. The 55% is self-explanatory, and this build is always at full health, so you will always get that damage boost. The greater blessing of endurance activates the moment we inflict an ailment. Now, even though it says polarity attacks inflict ailment, we are going to be inflicting ailments with our weapon techniques and our shield. Getting this blessing will significantly reduce the amount of damage you take, which allows you to stay alive and continue to deal damage. Next up, we have the Crab Talisman, which is an epic charm that can be found anywhere. This charm applies the Mark of Leeching every time you inflict an ailment. So every time you use your weapon technique, you will inflict an ailment and apply the Mark of Leeching. Whenever you apply the Mark of Leeching, the enemy will have a greenish glow around them, and every time they are hit, they will give you and your allies health. Now, you want to have crit chance as a secondary, and when you fully upgrade it, you're going to want to add crit chance again. Next up, we have the Reliquary of the Bear, which is an epic cursed amulet that you can get from Lighbringer. You want to get crit chance and rampage charge speed as its secondaries. And then, after uncursing and upgrading it, you want to double the crit chance and add crit damage at the end. Now, for the primary, it says 96% SOULSHATTER buildup if we have less Augment usage than our max. So our max Augment usage is 100. We need to have 90. More on that when we get to Augments. Next up, we have the Eye of the Dragon. Mine is primal, but yours does not have to be primal for this build to work. You can get the primal version in ATOT. Every other version you can get everywhere else. Its primary are every time you defeat an ailment-afflicted enemy, you will gain overhealth. Also, it gives you overhealth retention, and the third and most important stat, or primary I should say, is weapon tech inflicts ailments. So every time you use your weapon technique, you will inflict an ailment. Next up is Sheridan's Story. Sheridan's Story is a blue rare curse ring that can be found in Lighbringer. You want the first primary to be weapon charge, and when upgrading it, you're going to double that. Other secondaries you want to look out for are weapon tech damage and SOULSHATTER buildup. The primary is plus 96% SOULSHATTER buildup whenever you hit an enemy that has 4 or more stacks. We inflict ailments with our Eye of the Dragon, plus when we throw our shield thanks to our Crab Talisman. Next up we have our Lifestone, the Eye of Alliance, which is an epic Lifestone that can be found anywhere. Mine is Primal, but again you don't need Primal to make this build work. This gives you Soul Shatter build-up, and the secondaries you would want are crit chance and crit damage. Next is our banner, which is a common banner that can be found anywhere. This is the Wolf's Head banner. It gives you just a base increase to damage. Since I have air shock build, I wanted to go with doubling my air damage. I have damage to shock enemies, and then I added crit damage as the last upgrade. Now, before we jump into augments, we're going to keep 2 things in mind. 1, we have to keep our augment usage at 90 or below, and we need to have less might than any other attribute for our Soul Shatter build-up to work on our Sword of the Archons. So, first up, we have the most important augment in the game, Force Spirit. It's a 15 green augment, and its primary is while above 50% overhealth, attacks cannot be interrupted. This is going to let you continue attacking enemies even with attacks that would normally knock you back. This allows you, and you also have to have at least 50% overhealth, but this allows you to get in more crits, which increases your weapon tech charge, which also gives you overhealth, and it also allows you to deal more damage. So you continue to deal damage and get health and weapon charge at the same time. Keep in mind that certain boss elite enemies can still interrupt you with their special attacks. Having this allows you to just basically wipe through enemies and not have to worry so much about them killing you in 1 or 2 shots. Because as much as they're doing damage to you, you're gaining that overhealth back because of your crits. I always include this in any build. Now, the secondaries that we want are overhealth gain, and then we are going to double it. Ideally, you would want overhealth retention as a second secondary. You're going to want to double overhealth gain, and at the end you're going to want to add plus 5 or 6% depending on what you get to resistances as the last trait. Next up is Paradise, which is a 5 red augment. The first secondary you want to have is weapon tech damage. On the last upgrade, you're going to want to add Spirit. The primary of this augment gives you weapon charge when you crit. This build has 74% crit chance, which really helps you get that charge constant. Next is Void Shell, which is a legendary augment that can be found anywhere and gives you overhealth every time you hit a crit. For your secondaries, you're going to want overhealth gain and overhealth retention. If you can get it to roll with air damage or your elemental damage that you're dealing, you want to, then that's all the better. At the very end, you're going to want to plus 6% or 5% depending on what you get to all resistances. Next, we have the red 5 augment, Focus, which gives you overhealth on crit. The same as our previous augment, Void Shell. My Focus is a primal, but you don't need a primal for this build to work. Any Focus augment will work. Ideally, you want double weapon tech damage and weapon. So you pretty much want weapon tech damage, double it, and then on your last trait, you also want, again, weapon tech damage. Mine just happened to roll with Rampage bonus damage. Next up is Twilight Bloom, which just gives you a basic increase to your weapon tech damage. Secondaries you ideally want are air damage and damage to shocked enemies or weapon tech damage. The last upgrade and final secondary is plus 80 to 100 spirit. Now that is because we want to keep our spirit up with as much might as we're putting into this build. Next up is Ironheart, which is a rare 5 might that you can get from the Lightbringer game. You want longsword damage, and on the last upgrade, you're going to again add spirit. Now, you are going to see we have minus 50% rampage charge speed as its primary, even though it's giving us crit chance. Now that brings us back to the Reliquary of the Bear. The Reliquary of the Bear I mentioned earlier, we wanted rampage charge speed and crit chance, and that's to combat our Iron Armor. But you'll also notice that our Augment usage is 90, which gives us that 92% Soul Shatter buildup. Now, next up for our augments, we have Lucid Vision, a rare spirit augment which only drains 5, that gives you health whenever you hit enemies with your shield, which will we constantly be doing because again, our shield throws inflict ailments and apply the Mark of Legion. Next up, we have Godspeed. You gain weapon charge whenever you parry an enemy for 10 seconds. The secondary you want is overhealth gain. You're going to double that and add plus 5 or 6% to resistances at the end. Our last augment is Divine Conduit, which gives you Archon Fury charge whenever you are hit. You want to double the air damage as your second phase. This is important because Greyhawk's Archon Fury is Soul Shatter based. Whenever you activate your Archon Fury, you will unleash a shockwave that applies Soul Shatter buildup. You get plus 100% Soul Shatter buildup, and you unleash a shockwave every time you Soul Shatter an enemy. Now, on to the skill points. You will see I've fully spec'd into weapon techniques, Soul Shatter, Vitality, crit chance, crit damage, resistances, spirit, rampage, ailments, recovery, weak points, polarity attacks, all stats, and then you see I have a few stray skill points here and there. I have 1 for takedowns, 2 for finesse, 4 for banners, 1 for weapon timing, and 1 for Archon Fury. Now some of those you can choose to put anywhere you like. The weapon timing, the Archon Fury, and banners, you can take those points and put them wherever you like and it won't affect this build. Now, a few tips for this build. You must have the augments set up as I have them exactly for this build to work. Again, augment placement is very important in this game. And again, this build can be made with any element. So that means it can be made with fire, water, void, physical, or air. All you need to do is get secondaries for your respective element on your Archon sword. So for air, that's air damage and damage to shocked enemies. With fire, it's fire damage and damage to ignited enemies, and so on. Now, the real part where you can change and make your build unique is with Methostar. There are many different unique Methostars, and that deserves its own build video, just as long as it has spirit. Some Methostars have the Lion Talisman and Mark of Legion combo, the Lion Talisman Mark of Fragility combo, any combo that you would like, although I prefer the Mark of Legion and Lion Talisman combo if you can get it to roll with spirit. Well, that's all for this build. Thank you all for watching, and now I'll showcase a few clips from my upcoming build, King Armistice. Take care.